Ooh, okay, I guess we're getting a little personal today. I'm trying to give you guys good views, so when all the butterflies fly around behind me, you can enjoy those too. So we're just gonna hang out and chat. So welcome to my Vlogmas series, where we're gonna be going from Thanksgiving to Christmas, where I'm gonna try to answer as many questions as I can as a special gift from me to you. So today we're gonna be answering the personal questions, the ones that you guys wanted to know, from me to my dogs to my kids, stuff about Ben, my husband. So let's talk about it. And if you gotta just wrap presents or hang out, you know, we're just gonna be kind of chilling and talking now. So if you gotta do chores or whatever, just listen in, unless you wanna try to see how many butterflies. Ooh, that'll be fun. How many butterflies do you see behind me throughout this video? Fun times. So let's start with the beginning of the journey. So this is kind of going to be a combination between Lil Mac's question 4, because she asked multiple questions, which was, how did Ben and you meet? Was he always into gardening and no lawn as well? And then Joanne Jalen, who's asked questions on my questioning videos before, hey Joanne, is what got you interested in gardening? Were you always a green thumb? No. So I think we need to go back a little bit in time, because while I have many green plants behind me right now, that would not have always been the case. And I think this goes back to some questions I've gotten asked over time, which is, do I have a background in biology, horticulture, agriculture, anything? I don't know. Any of those things? I do not. I do not have a background in that. I did not grow up gardening. My mom says that she used to garden when I was little. I don't know about that. I don't recall us doing much gardening, especially once we moved here to Florida, and I was pretty little when we moved here. So no, I do not have a green thumb. I kill lots of plants. So if you are like me and you kill lots of plants, no fret. You can have a gorgeous, luscious garden that gets out of control, and you have to get it back in control, because there's nothing special. I know people, I appreciate it. I have a friend who's really into gardening, and she's like, you're so good at gardening. Like, you just have, I'm like, I am not, no. And I hope that's actually encouraging for people, because I don't. And that means you don't have to have it either. You have to have, and I don't honestly believe in having a black thumb or not having a green thumb, however you want to say it. I don't believe in that. I think it's not having the right understanding. And I think it really comes down to, like, do you really understand your climate, your soil, and what grows well in your area? And once you unlock that, yeah, you can look like a really good gardener then, because everything grows. But if you're trying to fight an uphill battle all the time, no. So no, I do not have a background in any of those things. Actually, okay, I'm gonna tell you, because I've never said this on camera before. So my background's actually in engineering. My degree is in mechanical engineering, and then I have a master's in engineering management. That's my background. It's not with plants at all. And my professional career, nothing to do with this stuff at all. At all. But it does lead to me to, how did I meet Ben? So Ben and I actually met when we were getting our masters. So my undergraduate degree is actually from University of Florida, go Gators. And then my graduate degree is actually from Duke University. And that is where I met Ben. We actually met on the first day, and then we really didn't talk at all. And not because of any real, good reason, bad reason. It's just we hung out with different groups. So our program was 120 people. And what was cool about it from my perspective is it was almost going abroad to go get a master's, because most of our program was international. There were only in 120 people, maybe 15 American students. So Ben hung out with the Americans, and I hung out with everybody else people. And that's just what happened. So for most of the year, we didn't hang around each other. So both of us were in a thing called MEMPDC, which, what does that mean? It means Masters of Engineering Management Program Development Committee. And we were both on different subcommittees. And then I ended up being the vice president of the committee. But he was on the recruiting committee with 2 really good friends of mine, Emma and Haruka. And what happened is other people on that committee were not reliable. So what would happen is that committee's job was when prospective students and families came to come see what they might be getting, they would be given tours and shown around and talk with the people on the recruiting committee. Well, a few of the members just kept not showing up. So Haruka and Emma, who were on the committee with Ben, would be frantically what do we do? Because we're short a person. And they would call Ben, and he would show up. And that's how I used to hear a lot about Ben, is because I was the vice president, is yeah, we almost had a problem with the tour again, but Ben showed up. Or, so-and-so bailed again, but you know, you can always rely on Ben. He'll be there for you. And, you know, so Ben helped, like they would just always be like, Ben, help me with this. Ben's such a nice guy. Like they would gush about Ben all the time. And I'm like, oh, this Ben dude, like he seems like a quality guy. And my other friend and him were on the intramural soccer team together. And I always heard from that friend about like, Ben's so good. Ben can be the goalie. Ben can be the midfielder. He's so good. Like, you know, he's got skills for an American, stuff like that, because most of the international people are like, oh, Americans can't play soccer, whatever. See here, he was just like a really nice guy who you could depend on and would be there for you. But he was also very sporty. And I feel like these are all very attractive things. So he and I went on a date. We went and got very, 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 very spicy food that our friends from India would be very proud of, that we were able to handle that level of spiciness. And then we came back to Florida. We went on our second date, and then we kept dating, got engaged, had babies, and here we are. Oh wait, I kind of skipped a step. We also got married in between engaged and having babies. There was time. So that's Ben and me. Yeah. Which leads to, okay, so then that other part was he always into gardening? So neither of us was into gardening. No. Like I definitely was like my dad. So when we moved to Florida in 1990, my dad, when he was going to his interview in Fort Lauderdale, he was like, he saw some guys mowing the medians and just drenched in sweat. And I think this was like June or July down in like Broward County. So very hot. And he looked at them and said, I will never mow my lawn if we move down here. But he didn't think he was going to get the job. And then he got the job. And we moved down here. And he never mowed his lawn at all. Once. He may come back and say, I did 2 times. Okay, but the majority of the 30-something years we've been here, no mowing. So I never was into gardening at all. So the thing about Ben is, I don't know if I've said this on it or not on the channel. He's from the Pacific Northwest. He's from like the Portland, Oregon, Washington state area. Actually, fun fact, I figured this out. If you ever watch Becky on Acre Homestead, I watch her channel a lot. And she said some stuff sometimes, and I was like, I think she's from the city that Ben's from. And she said enough stuff that I pointed out to Ben, and he's like, yeah, she's totally from the same city. So yeah, so fun fact, Ben is from the same city. I don't know, not now where she lives in her new home, but where she was living on her original acre homestead. That is the city, and I won't say what it is because I know she has kept it private, but she said enough that I could figure it out. But that's actually the city that Ben grew up for his entire life until he went to college. So fun fact. So Ben was exposed to more stuff, I think, growing up, just because I think the Pacific Northwest, so like having apple trees, and like I think his mom did some like light gardening, like I think college age, like he lived on one of those kind of like sustainable farm things, like where you build your own house and like you grow all your own food and raise your own rabbits and stuff. So his dad did that. So like I think his family has some exposure to it, but his parents, like my parents growing up, usually one parent had like 2 jobs and the other parent was like had a job and was going to school at the same time trying to get a degree. So I don't think they really had time. I just never got the sense that they really had time. They do like a little bit of gardening-ish stuff now, and nothing like crazy like me. I will tell you, our parents thought Ben and I were crazy when we started doing all this. So if that makes you feel better. Yeah, so they are very supportive now. The most supportive when we started really doing a lot of the crazy stuff and the YouTube channel. My dad was actually the most supportive, who has the least experience of all the parents with growing anything. So go figure on that front. So Ben and I, when we bought the house, we had no thoughts of doing gardening. We were like, we'll pay someone to take care of the yard. That was really our thought. But I think like many people, we want to minimize our impact on the environment, and we do care about wildlife, and that is something that always, since I was growing up, I always loved birds. I had my like National Audubon field guide, and I would try to like identify plants, and I would climb up in the trees and try to see what birds I could see in the trees. So that's my background. And then like Ben's from Pacific Northwest, and that's all I'm going to say about that when it comes to environmentalism, just all the things you would think of. So there was always that piece. And then once you have like a yard, then you like start having to deal with stuff. Even when you pay someone to deal with stuff, you still have to you're like, they're not pulling this thing. What is this thing? I remember one of the times I was like, why didn't the landscape people pull this thing? And then I was like, Ben was like, oh, there's a fruit on it. And that's how actually our calamandan tree So I don't know how it got there. I don't know if the previous owners put it there. I don't know if like a bird pooped a seed there, but we had, that's how we thought it was actually an oak sapling. And thus started my journey of trying to figure out what the heck was in our yard and what are you supposed to do about it. And then it started the ideas of David the Good's channel. David the Good was probably one of the first people who really influenced me on like you could do things differently in your yard. And then later Pete's channel, and then what's his name, oh my gosh, Mark from Self-Sufficient Me down in Australia. Those would be probably the 3 original big influencers on me of like you could do stuff different. But really I would say David the Good was probably one of the biggest, like seeing his parents' food forest down in Fort Lauderdale, which was really impactful because where I grew up and where he grew up is very close to each other. So we're very close stomping grounds. So it started to connect a lot of dots, because a lot of what I'm used to seeing, and I think a lot of us are used to seeing, is stuff that works up north and not down in Florida. So I never even had thought of growing food. So then that started the journey of like, maybe we'll do some stuff different in our yard. But the original reason I started looking into any amount of gardening was I was trying to figure out what the heck was growing in our yard, and should we pull it, should we leave it. But really the big shift started happening because I think I was pregnant when I started to see David the Good's videos. Yeah, because that would have been when we bought the house about 8 years ago. It was right around that time. And then with our oldest son, as he started to struggle with eating and stuff like that, that's when we really started to get into growing food. Because if some of you guys who've been around with the channel for a really long time are aware of this, but those who are not, that's okay. My son, and I have never said this on the channel, but my oldest son is special needs, and he was massively developmentally delayed with eating. He was aspirating on food. He had a lot of other issues too. So we were working with the eating therapist over at Johns Hopkins, and because he kept choking on food as he would eat it, and I'm talking about even like liquids, he was choking on them, is that he developed a fear of food. So I'm not even talking like trying to eat it. I'm not talking texture problems. I'm talking like literally you set it on the tray and he was like clawing his way out of that high chair because he was terrified. You could put your keys, you could put any plastic thing in front of him, he's shoving it in his mouth, no problem. But as soon as he sensed that he was supposed to eat it, he'd freak out. So we started growing food so that it was very much like, this is not about you eating it. And so he started calling them his baby plants. So we would go to Home Depot and Lowe's and just pick up seeds and random plants and talk about like how the corn, and we could show him corn, and you know that they would grow, and we call them his baby plants, and he called them his baby plants. And then because of that, that's how we started even getting into butterfly gardening, is because of him, is because he loved the Hungry Caterpillar book, and I think I saw a caterpillar on some tropical milkweed one day, and I looked into it and I was like, oh, okay, so if we plant this we can get those butterflies, and he loves butterflies, and those were his baby plants, and he took care of his little caterpillars, and he like took care of his caterpillars. He would pick them up, and it was so freaking cute. He's so cute. So, and he's just a riot at times. Oh my gosh. So and so that really started to expand stuff. That's actually kind of the biggest reasons I started getting it, was because I was trying to help him. And then then it just becomes a slippery slope. The more you learn, the more you're like, oh. So then, you know, as he started to not be as interested as much as he got older, then, you know, I mean, I had the gardening bug. So I was like, well, I'll just keep going. And then we did some crazy stuff in our yard. Which leads to this question: has gardening with you helped your son further his food, or helped your son with his food fear? And then what new vegetable is he excited about? So, and I do get this question in other ways. People have said like, oh my gosh, your kids must eat so healthy and they must have such a good diet and eat so well. And the answer is no. No, they do not. They do not eat well. And that is one of the challenges. When you grow really, really good and healthy food, doesn't mean everybody in your house is going to eat them. So, and having a son who's special needs and then a younger child, my second one, it felt like, I was like, we went through the struggle with the first, but God blessed us with the second. He was such a good eater. He ate everything I ate. And then boom, he started breaking out hives everywhere. And he is allergic. If you know the big 8 allergies, he's allergic to 6 of the 8. But he has grown out of some of them. We just got him retested. So he started not being able to eat like anything. So Ben for a very long time would make a meal for the oldest, a meal for the youngest, and then a meal for us because we had such dietary challenges. So my oldest is no longer afraid of food. That's the good thing. But because of some of the aspects of his special needs, introducing new foods is always a challenge. So we have over time, while we have gotten rid of the fear of food, we still continue to lose foods at times, and we're working with different therapists to re-expand the foods, but we had other challenges we really needed to work on first. And if you're a special needs family member, you can understand that there's usually a lot of fronts that you're trying to fix at once. So yeah, but the newest one he just picked up was corn on the cob, which was very exciting. And the little one is now eating corn on the cob. So that has been very exciting. We're starting to get them. And look, I'm playing the long game from a health perspective right now. And I think it really comes from when I had my lactation consultant, because he had lots of different things when he was a baby. But the lactation consultant, she gave me some of the best advice, and I've given it to so many moms. And she was like, the first priority is that the baby is fed. The second priority was to protect the milk supply, and then the third priority was to get the baby to latch. She's like, but if you are getting the baby fed, you are doing what a mom needs to do. And so I have carried that through the years of, you know, is he being fed? Like, it may not be the ideal, but you know, it's just, we just keep picking away at it slowly, and we just have to prioritize which things we're working on and focusing on. So there you go. So no, there's no magical story with that. But you know what, if you have struggles with your kids, I do think even if they don't eat the things you harvest, one day they will start to. And it's just exposure and understanding their food and where it comes from is a big journey that I think is important for all children to go on, no matter whether they eat. I'll speak from my own experience. I had a picky, limited diet when I was growing up. And just one day, sometimes just having that exposure, as long as you always keep it positive, you know, the doors will open. I eat, if my 8-year-old self saw what I ate today, she would be shocked. But honestly, going to Duke, that was one of the biggest like game changers with my diet, was with all those international friends and just the way they presented food to me. It just was like, it wasn't like I had to make a meal of any of it. And a lot of my Indian and my Thai friends, especially, they would just be like, I made this, or I went and got this. Do you want to try a bite? And that just felt so, it wasn't overwhelming to just be like, oh, do you want to just try a bite? And honestly, people probably had tried that earlier, but just that day when it happened, it started to click and I started trying new things. And then all of a sudden, you know, though, Sutani, my roommate, she'd be like, you want to try this, Jacqueline? I'd be like, yeah, sure. And then I'd put it in my mouth and I'd be like, oh, what is this, Sutani? And she'd be like, hee. And my head would explode from the fire. She'd be like, is that spicy? Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. Oh, Sutani. Oh my gosh. So there's no perfect story with that one. So when it comes to the journey with the gardening, Ben and I have been pretty much on the same page the entire time. Like, I'm usually the one who comes up with the ideas and the suggestions, but from the time we really got into gardening and dealing with our yard to the point at which, like, we started doing stuff with our oldest child, to me starting a YouTube channel, to going crazy and putting all this stuff in, like, he has been 100% always supportive and a huge champion in the background. He helps try to do whatever he can. Well, you see him do stuff in videos, but he does a lot. And of course he's really supportive with the whole, like, here's food. And he's like, okay, I gotta go figure out a recipe. So yeah, he's 100% has always been, him and I have always been kind of on the same page with all this stuff. But he lets me take the lead on, like, what does that look like? His real pullback usually on me is like, don't go, because I'm big picture, he's details. That's one of the big differences between Ben and I. Big picture lady, details guy. And he'll just be like, I probably would have years ago been like, oh, the lawn gone, but he pulled back because he was just like, but there's a lot of pieces to doing that. We should think through that. Do we know plants well enough? And I'm like, yeah, but I saw a thing. And so he has always been like, let's just make sure we're really methodical and realistic, and we can maintain whatever we do. So yeah, that would be only like, I guess, like not, I wouldn't even say it's not supporting. It's just really, it's the conversation that you need to have about don't tear everything out. And I think that was very wise. That was a very wise feedback for him to give me. And then on the flip side, I'm the one pushing, being like, but we could have arches, and we could pull out this, and we could put that in, and then we could put these plants here. And what you guys don't actually see probably in a lot of videos, whenever I do like garden layout things, like usually I would say 90-something% of the time, when you see that I've laid out plants, like before I dig holes, I will bring him out here and be like, what do you think? I can't really, other than maybe like if there's just a plant or two, but any of these bigger projects, I've always been like, what do you think? Do you like that? And once in a blue moon, I'll have a suggestion, but yeah, he's 100% always, he's just the man behind the scenes with all this stuff. And if you've ever gotten like the gardening guide, like all that website stuff, that's all Ben. The emails that come out once you sign up, that's all Ben. Like I write them, but he does all the computer stuff to make that happen. That is not me. Let's be 100% clear about that. That is Ben all day. So he is a very, 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 very big supporter of this journey, which has been really nice, because I know that can be really hard. I know some of you have significant others that maybe are not 100% on the like, let's tear out my entire yard train. So I get that. That would be hard if I couldn't go as crazy as I have in my garden. So Joanne Jalen also asked me, how do you make time for gardening with little kids? There's two ways, but here's the big thing is I made a lot of choices about things that don't take a lot of time, because I didn't have a lot of time. Actually, outside of the kids, just from a work perspective, I have historically worked a lot of hours and then had a really, really long commute. So I haven't had the time to be fussing at plants. So I've been very intentional about picking a lot of plants that don't take a lot of time, and where I can do kind of bursts of work. So, and you've seen a lot of those bursts of work, from putting arches in, to moving mulch around, to installing plants. So when I don't literally have the kids doing stuff with me, I can do a lot of work, and then I kind of leave it for a long time, and then I do a lot of work. And that really works out a lot with like native plants, because you don't really want to be fussing with them because of wildlife. And then the more you just introduce kids when they're little, it's just kind of like, but I mean, kids, look, if you have kids, you know, you can get the best presents that they ever said they wanted for Christmas, and then they'll play the most with the box. And it's kind of similar with gardening. You can try to do complicated projects with them, or you can get a giant pile of mulch, and then they're like, it's a mountain and a fort, and they build stuff on it. They like running up and down it all day long. So get a mulch pile. That would be my biggest thing. Get a mulch pile. They will play forever. And then my kids like digging up the grass to make roads for their vehicles. So when Ben and I would be working out here at times, you know, they would just be digging. Oh, and another thing I used to do actually when they were really little, especially during the summer months, is I had a little kiddie pool, and I would just put it like actually kind of where the camera is, and they would splash and play in it while Ben and I would like be pulling up sweet potatoes or be, you know, putting in stuff. So sometimes you probably didn't see that on camera, but there would be like a little kiddie pool oftentimes in our front yard. It was very, very redneck Southern Floridian. Like, yeah, we don't have a fancy pool in the backyard. We got this blow up kiddie pool. We're gonna put it in our front yard. And then you just dump all the water out anyways, and it waters your garden. So it worked out. But yeah, the kids enjoyed playing in the mulch, digging up grass to make roads. My kids really like building stuff, from train tracks to whole cities of stuff. So when they are outside, they take their little excavators and bulldozers, and they make paths, and then they like to get water and make mud paths, and then make little Lego boats and stuff. So you just bring them out there. That's the big thing. We got to bring them out there and have them do stuff. And honestly, and also don't have high expectations for them. Like, they'll sit there and say like, I want to help you, mommy, dig all the holes, and they'll get through like one, maybe two, and then they just like kind of tire out. So as long as you have other like outdoor toys for them to navigate their way to, whether it's like little bicycles on the driveway. Oh yeah, we would always bring out like their little tricycles, and they would just ride around on the driveway. So that's kind of how. So they get to do some of it with us, and then they go. And here's another thing I noticed. don't invest in kid gardening tools. 2 reasons. One, they're usually junk. They're not made well. But 2, they want to use what you're using, and a hand shovel and like a hand fork, like they are all about that jam. So what I found was easier was to have like 2 basic hand tool sets that I just happened to acquire over time. And then I started to realize it worked out really well because each of them would end up having a shovel or a little hand rake, and they would play with it. So while I'm not a big fan of like hand rakes because I don't tend to use them, they used them a ton, and they'll just. And then also couple other things is like have places for them where they can do their thing. So like you might have like a really highly manicured area, but like give them spaces to play and explore, like where they put in the plants they want to put in, or you know, they get to like kind of make a mess of it, and you know, just be thoughtful about where you do it because you know, if you don't want it in your front yard, but sometimes it can be like behind a thing so you guys can't really see it, and other people might not be able to see it, but they get to have fun and you can keep an eye on them. So those would be my things. Yeah, that's what stuff we've done. Bicycles, kiddie pools, mulch piles, have them help. And while you see them help, I mean, they don't help with most of it. They just like running around, and that's the thing, right? Kids just like being around you, and they'll help as much as they want to, and then they don't, and then they get interested again, and then they don't. So it goes through waves of how interested and much they want to help. And then sometimes when I need to get done stuff fast, like usually they'll just hang outside with Ben and I'll just knock something out, put it on video for you guys, and that's how it works. So then Lynn Mac also asked, could you share a rescue story of your puppies? Absolutely. I love my doggies. So we have 3 dogs, Teddy, Harper, and Shiloh. They are all poodles. Teddy and Harper, I know they've got patches. They're what's called party poodles because it means they're part one color, part another color. And I am a big fan of poodles. I have always had poodles my entire life. I've had 1, 2, 3. So I had 3 poodles before when I was growing up, and now I got 3 poodles now. So all of our poodles came from Florida Poodle Rescue. Teddy and Harper were rescued from one place, and then Shiloh, who we got just recently, was rescued totally differently. So the story of them. So I always had poodles because my mom has asthma and is allergic to like all the animals, and so she had grown up having poodles, so we had poodles. And I think poodles are awesome dogs that don't have the best reputation, which is funny because Ben had never had dogs. And so when we had talked about getting pets in the future, there was a discussion about having 2 dogs and a cat, and because he had grown up with cats, and I was like, I am slightly allergic to cats. My mom is very allergic to my cats, or allergic to cats, and my kids are allergic to cats, so you know, we carried on those genetics. So what Ben and I agreed to was we would get 2 dogs, because I always found when they have a friend that actually helps a lot. And that was similar because when I was growing up we had Snow, and then later we got Bambi, and Snow always did better when Bambi was around, and vice versa. And so what we agreed to is we'd get the first dog was going to be a poodle, because that's what I was familiar with, and he had never had a dog. So it was like, let's get what I know, and then we can talk about picking another type of dog, because he literally had never had, I mean, he even had friends who had dogs. His best friend had a golden retriever, but he didn't know what it meant to like, and I always tell people, dogs are like eternal 3-year-olds. They're always needy, and they want you, and they love you, but they are a lot of hands-on effort, but I love them. So Teddy, we got Teddy 10 years ago now. So the story about Teddy and Harper. So Teddy and Harper were rescued from the same hoarder. This woman probably has mental health issues because it was not the first time they had raided her place to get dogs out before. So she was hoarding dogs, and then they were saying puppy mill breed, but she wasn't selling any of them. So she was just kind of breeding them and then keeping them all. So what happened? So this is the story that the Florida Poodle Rescue people told me, which was that they were getting complaints from a neighbor, and they called like the Humane Society, ASPCA, to come and look into it. And they came and they found 30 dogs, and they rescued all the dogs out of there. And the neighbor called and said, you didn't come and get the dogs. They're still barking all the time. I just hear them nonstop, always barking, always barking. And they were like, no, but we got all these dogs. They're like, you didn't get all the dogs. So they went back onto the property. And if you know Alachua, well, it's a little bit more, it's not like a standard neighborhood. There was a trailer in the back of the property, and there were dogs all in cages that lived their whole life in cages back in that trailer. So Teddy was the first one we got. He was about 4 to 5 years old when we got him. Teddy definitely came out of the trailer. All his teeth are ground down from chewing on the cages. When we first got him, he had like no muscle mass here at all. Oh my gosh. Oh, well, let me tell you a little bit before. So he was rescued. So what happens is Florida Poodle Rescue works with all the different, like the Humane Society, ASPCA. So when they get poodle mixes in, they will call, they have a community, a network. So they will take some of them, and then Florida Poodle Rescue fosters them. So we had a really nice Romanian couple who fostered Teddy, but Teddy did not have that name. Teddy was called Lincoln, and originally in the file, and then the foster parents called him Philip. But he only lived with them for a little while, and we were like, these names suck. But whatever. So we named him Teddy because he looked like a teddy bear. He was just very fluffy in the face. And so we called him Teddy. And when we got Teddy, he had like no muscle mass. Like I have never, it was so weird. He had like no chest muscles. So he could kind of walk. He could not run. He didn't have the ability to run. He had never really gone on grass. He didn't know, like, lizards could be right next to him. He wouldn't even notice. Squirrels would be near him. He wouldn't even notice. And we lived in downtown St. Pete at the time. And when we would walk, there would be chain link fences for some of these buildings they're putting up. And he would back himself up. And this is how we know for sure he was in a cage. He would back himself up to those chain link fences and poop through the fence. And I realized that's how I knew, is because that's what he had to do to keep his cage clean. It was he would back up to the edge of the cage and poop out. So, yeah. And Teddy was, well, Teddy's nickname was LL Teddy, standing for Ladies Love Teddy, because Ben always joked, and I always joked, it didn't matter where we walked Teddy, and it didn't matter the age of the lady. She could be 2, she could be 82. They would be like, oh, he's so cute. And he is... and was, even before he got older, he was the most mellow dog. He was just so compliant and just chill. So people just loved walking up and petting Teddy, and he just would, he loved it back. So he was a sweetheart and a half, but he really struggled being home alone. He would destroy doors like crazy. He destroyed cages, and what I realized is that he was so used to being around other dogs that when we were not home, he was freaking out. And the moment we got Harper, all stopped. All completely stopped. So then there's Harper. So Harper is part of what the Florida Poodle Society called the H group. So there was a whole bunch of them that had H names, like Harry, and I don't remember any of the other ones. Ben could probably remember more of the names. So Harper, they actually had multiple requests before we got him. And they actually rejected multiple families because Harper was very, very, very skittish. And yeah, he was very skittish when we got him. And the reason, one, we didn't have kids yet, and Harper did not handle children well at that time, one. And two, I started to realize he had a fear of women. And I think it has to do with the hoarder. And I think Harper must have been in the house. One, he doesn't have any of the teeth issues that we saw with Teddy. Two, he, if I suddenly moved in his direction, like, you know, you drop something or whatever, and you're just like, if I did that, off he'd run, just bolt every time. If Ben did that, it didn't happen. But if I did it, or my mom did it, or anything like that, he just, and Harper really only came around me because he liked Teddy, and Teddy was my shadow. That's what Ben always said. He goes, Teddy's your shadow, because no matter where I went, which is funny, later on, once we had the kids and we play hide and seek, if you ever noticed, if you just watched where Teddy went, you knew exactly where I was hiding in the house when we play. The kids had never figured that out, but that's how you could always figure it out. That's where Jacqueline is, just wherever Teddy follows, Teddy will find me. And so Harper would only really come near me for the first few years, really because Teddy was always at my side. But Harper loved Ben. And he loved my dad. So, you know, I was cool. I was like, look, if you found your safe place in our house and that's Ben and it's my dad, that's fine. You know, I'm just gonna make sure you're taken care of. And, you know, similar issues, didn't know how to run, never really played with toys. Both of them we had tried to teach how to do toys. Harper never really took to it. He would sometimes play with a toy in secret. But as soon as he noticed that you had noticed, he'd totally stop. So, I don't know, kind of feel bad for him, but you know what, he's happy. He just kind of likes to curl up and watch things in life. I always wondered if there were cats in the house because I've never seen a dog wag their tail that way. He kind of does this. It's really weird. Have you ever seen a dog articulate their tail like that? So he'll wag his tail slowly and kind of go like that. I do think it's really cool. Neither of them had their tails docked, which is common with poodles, where they cut the tail off so that you can have that little short pom-pom. So we like to try to keep them more traditional with the little like flag tails, like a proper retriever would have. So Harper, that's Harper. And Harper was about 2.5 when we got him. And then Miss Shiloh. So Miss Shiloh came from Tennessee. So she's from a puppy mill. They raided the puppy mill and they had been breeding her already. We know she has had at least 1 litter. Originally they thought she was going to be like 3 to 5 years old, but when I started interacting with her, I was like, oh no, she seems like she's a 2-year-old dog. She's very, 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 very puppyish, which is not uncommon with rescues who haven't been socialized, but there was just a lot of stuff that I was just like, I don't know, this dog seems to act very young. Having had dogs, because our prior dogs we'd had since puppies when I was younger, so I have been around puppies before. But I will tell you, it is very, very nice when you deal with rescue agencies like Florida Pool Rescue, where the dogs are already like housebroken and you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But there's still lots of work to do. Shiloh, we're what, 3-4 months in, and I'm still working on a lot of basic fundamental stuff with her, and that's okay. She's got a lot of anxiety issues. She's totally freaked out by like a lot of stuff. So she was rescued from the puppy mill. She actually got adopted out through like the Humane ASPC Society. But the lady was like, she's too much energy, and she's got a lot of energy. She's got like a lot of energy. So we are continuing trying to figure out some jobs for her, like a proper poodle would have, because proper poodles are hunting dogs, and most people don't realize that. Not that I'm gonna go hunting, but you know. So that's Shiloh. So Shiloh got moved to a foster mommy who deals with standard poodles, and Shiloh is also my shadow, which is creating a challenge because now Harper likes me. Now it's been a lot of years. It took about 7 years, and then one day he just was like, oh, I'll come up to you, you'll pet me, you'll be nice to me. And that's the thing, I think it's like what I was saying about the kids. It's like you're consistent, and then one day when they're ready, they're ready. And then that was kind of what happened with Harper, is like one day he was totally ready to be around women, and now he's totally good with my mom. He's totally good with me. He's not skittish like he used to be. So just make a good home. Just hope one day they figure it out. Hi, squirrel. There's a squirrel watching me now. Well, I hope you enjoyed learning a lot more about me and Ben and my kids and my dogs and a little bit about our gardening journey. And if you have more questions, whatever they are, remember this is all part of an Ask Me Anything series. I will try to get as many questions answered as I can throughout the season between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving and your preparations for Christmas are going really, really well. Thank you for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.